Today's show is sponsored by Yafa Bay and her Spirit of Tepereth Metaphysical Marketplace, here to provide you and your naturally special gifts with guidance and support through your life's journey, providing you tools such as candles, incense, charms, jewelry, oils, crystals, and much more. Visit them at 1273 West Broad Street in Columbus, Ohio, or online at spiritoftepereth.com. You can find all our sponsors' information in the show notes on our website. Now let's start the show.
The controversial group leading the charge, ADOS, or the American Descendants of Slavery. The controversial group ADOS, or the American Descendants of the controversial group ADOS, the American Descendants of the controversial group ADOS.
Welcome to the Articles of ADOS podcast, a weekly show where we bring you undiscussed news, articles, and information important to the American Descendants of Slavery, our friends, and our allies. You can find us every Friday, 10 a.m. on WCRS 92.7 and 98.3 here in Columbus, Ohio. Or as always, you can listen on your favorite podcast app. This is episode 34. I am your host, Lisa Todd, along with my co-host,
Daud Giazan. On today's show, we will share articles from the Moguldom Nation, Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, the Uppity Negro Network, Atlanta Black Star, Fox News, and Context Media. Later in the show, stay tuned for our main event, where we dive into and interview 3 articles entitled Barack Obama criticizes progressives over defund the police, saying slogan can drive away moderates, to Democrats should ditch defund the police and give Ocasio-Cortez a bigger platform, all the way to Obama says, and lastly, Obama isn't mad about slogans, he's mad we're questioning the police.
Personality.
Peace.
This week in our personality piece, I'm going to pose a question that forces us to have personalities.
Okay, what questions do you have for us this week?
Well, just was observing things, and a thought came to mind. Why hasn't there been massive protests and violence from MAGA after Trump's loss? Even during this time of challenging votes and election results where he's, bringing lawsuits, weekly almost. Where are all the race wars that people warned us about? I mean, where's MAGA? I don't see MAGA. And they threatened us a lot before the election. If we didn't vote for Trump or Trump lost, this was going to happen and this is going to happen. Where are ya?
Well, some of it has been delayed, and in terms of the motivations for such angst among whites and disillusioned blacks, for that matter. Only because, as we shared 3 episodes ago, there is some serious contention from the stuff that Trump is bringing forward to challenge the outcomes. A lot of people believe sincerely that he won, and therefore they're kind of holding bated breath to see the challenges, the court challenges, and it appears like the court is doing what I suspected when we had that discussion. They're slamming them down, I believe, no matter how legitimate they may be, because they have the scent of what power really wants out of them in those decisions, all the way to the media doing its usual job of hiding white criminality. What do I mean? There have been clashes that are just not being spoken of. I get it on some of it on the alternative media, and some people posting on alternative sites where there have been clashes. They're just not being reported all too often as clashes. Some that did, like about 2 weeks ago, there was a serious clash between MAGA supporters and Movement for Black Lives and progressives in Washington, D.C. itself, where there was this big carloads of MAGA supporters going to Washington, staging somewhat of a revolt. Well, they clashed with protesters there. It sort of died down quickly, but that was one of the examples of what people were, being told to be afraid about.
Yeah. Well, I guess because I'm recalling back when Trump actually won, and the amount of, even after his inauguration, the amount of thousands of people in the streets marching. There was the women's march, there was the pink hat march, there was the I don't think it was called pink hat, it's called something else, but I'll just move on. But
I know what you mean.
And so it was more resistance, as the people say.
To some degree, that has been quieted also by the coronavirus hype that people are complaining or celebrating in the comfort of their own homes on Zoom conferences and that sort of thing. So yes, I don't see the big thing, because a lot of people believe that Trump has lost, and so there's not much need to celebrate that. They're happy that Joe Biden's in, and we're going to have a more respectable form of racism.
The MAGA people think that?
No, the MAGA people are the ones that are different. They're the ones that are still out and about, hoping for the election results to be changed, as well as arguing and still fighting on Zoom conferences as well.
So once they finally accept reality that, the election that
it's like the South. I have to say, it's like the South will rise.
It may be coming.
It's like the South will rise again. The Confederacy really didn't disappear; it just mutated. Mm-hmm. So they'll mutate it into something else. Another blow that took place to dissuade those who are thinking of some sort of armed struggle took place with the foiling by FBI of the attempt to both kidnap and overrun the government in Michigan. That sent a shockwave. It's much like the shockwave that the first attack on the World Trade Center towers took. It had an impact on that movement at the time. And then what happened with another person, the Oklahoma City bombing, that had a stilling effect on people seeing how devastating such aggression can be. It got a lot of people in the movement at the time, the militia movement, to sort of back down a lot from their rhetoric and their activities. I suspect that attempt in Michigan also sent a shockwave of the same result, getting a lot of those people to stand down, as Mr. Trump announced for them to do.
Oh, okay. That's probably it. They listened to him?
They probably really listened to him.
And I guess I understand, like, for example, why COVID could be a deterrent. But, over the summer, Black Lives Matter was heavy in these streets, after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were killed. And so, could be that, could be the weather. It's cold outside. and
more fears about this is so much of what I said about what they would do with COVID. They would keep it going until the new flu season would come, and that's exactly what they've done. Mm-hmm. And it's having some noticeable impacts.
Yeah. So hopefully that there is no race war. Hopefully MAGA accepts defeat in dignity. Is there dignity in defeat?
I think it's going to be for them like the South shall rise again. Trump is not going to go anywhere anytime soon unless they poison him or do something else to deter him from running again, which they say he's thinking about now. So all that's up there. And again, while an outright hot fire race war may have been averted, even if it was serious, we have a slow motion race war going on, and that's another reason why I'm glad we're a part of the ADOS movement, because we recognize that war is very devastating, as slow motion as it is, and we're trying to do something to change that.
Yeah, and I just think that a lot of that was just voter suppression, period. Just trying to get people to either one, just be so scared to not get involved in politics because, MAGA might be at the polls with their shotguns or whatever,
Or when it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, right. So, it's a lot of tough talk anyway on the internet, period, anyway. Mm-hmm. So, you got to take legitimate threats seriously, of course. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, people online are just full of hot air.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially with the acts of the so-called lone wolves, which when further research goes into them, they weren't lone wolves at all. They were parts of packs that had plans, and they just operated independently at that time for those particular objectives. So with the rise in white male aggression and violence, yes, such concerns or such statements should be taken seriously. Catch the fire. If you're ADOS, an ally or friend, we encourage you to connect with a local ADOS chapter and help change your local politics. Our ADOS Ohio chapter in Columbus meets every fourth Sunday of the month. For more information on the time and location, visit adoscolumbus.org. You can also get more information on the ADOS movement, our politics, and the agenda. Please visit ados101.com. In today's Rapid News Reports, we have some articles that you may have missed, all in some way affect you and your ADOS life. Up first, we have
Why Black Americans May Face a Slower Recovery from the Recession, from the publication Morning Star and Dow Jones. Authors and writer Dow Jones staff. Black workers at every level of educational attainment have substantially higher unemployment rates than white workers, according to Labor Department data. The expanding gap signals Black Americans can expect to have a longer and slower recovery from the 2020 economic recession, regardless of whether they have attended college or not completed high school. Some key takeaways. Number 1, the difference is more pronounced for workers with less education. For Black Americans to have the same job prospects as whites, they often need to hold more advanced credentials. Frequently, Black workers need to send additional signals about their qualifications to get the same job, said Bradley Hartley, an economist at American University in Washington. That's why you'll see a Black person with a master's degree in a job that only requires a bachelor's. Number 2, the unemployment gap between Black and white workers has widened. Black workers have been disproportionately impacted by job loss as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in part because they held more of the jobs that were lost this year, including in transportation, hospitality, and retail sectors. And number 3, the impact could be far-reaching. The discrepancies signal that Black Americans can expect to have a longer and slower recovery from the 2020 economic recession. Lower earnings and a weaker employment prospects for Black workers have costs for society overall, said Michelle Holder, an economist at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. It means fewer dollars are earned, spent, and taxed in Black communities. Higher rates of unemployment and poverty are associated with less stable families, higher rates of incarceration, and worse health outcomes. The people living in those communities often require additional public assistance such as food stamps and Medicaid. One way or another, America will bear the burden of this, she said. Higher incarceration, higher COVID-19 deaths of Black people, more tax dollars spent. The bill will come due. I graded this article good. The warnings are loud and clear. And now that we know, what are we going to do about it? Wait, I think we're supposed to wait and see what Biden and Harris do, right?
Right.
And up next,
From the publication, The Moguldom Nation, entitled Pastor Dr. Alan Bozak Goes After Obama for Criticizing Reverend Jeremiah Wright in New Book. Writer Anne Brown. Former President Barack Obama's latest memoir, A Promised Land, may be selling well, but it is not sitting well with pastor and activist Reverend Alan Bozak. Considered one of South Africa's leading spokesmen against racism, Dr. Bozak gave a scathing sermon criticizing Obama for his remarks about his former pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Obama distanced himself from his longtime pastor, Reverend Wright, during his first bid for the White House in 2008 over controversial comments by Wright about the U.S. government, white supremacy, and racism. A close friend of Wright's, Bozak, said Wright has not uttered a harsh word against Obama. Meanwhile, the Obamas, first Barack, then Michelle in her book, and now again Obama in this new book, have not stopped their attacks against Wright, Bozak said. Why would this powerful, popular ex-president, this undisputed darling of the establishment, need to include those pages in this book? Bozak asked, before answering the question. The Pentagon felt the only way to change the anti-war sentiment in the U.S. at the time was to get Obama elected. Obama would become the new face of the empire and its wars. He would be able to make it seem benevolent and acceptable, Bozak explained. I graded this article good. A WikiLeaks report proves Pastor Bozak's accusations that the white elite predator class knew who Obama was, as well as how Obama could be used to fulfill their interests. Coming up. And next,
Nearly 1 million black families had their farms stolen. This bill could help African Americans claim up to 160 acres each. From the publication The Mogul Nation, author and writer Ann Brown. Black farm owners make up 1.3% of the country's 3.4 million farmers. Kamal Bell, 29, is one of the few still operating. His farm in Durham, North Carolina could benefit from proposed new farm bill legislation to help increase the number of black farms and also help existing ones survive. The new farm bill, the Justice for Black Farmers Act, has been introduced by Senators Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, and Christian Gillibrand. The Justice for Black Farmers Act seeks to address and correct historic discrimination in the U.S. Department of Agriculture related to federal farm assistance and lending that caused black farmers to lose millions of acres of farmland. This discrimination has robbed black farmers and their families of hundreds of billions of dollars of intergenerational wealth, according to a press release. The bill would create an annual $8 billion fund to purchase farmland on the open market and then grant it to black farmers. The goal is to make 20,000 grants per year for 9 years with maximum allotments of 160 acres, according to Mother Jones. About 95% of rural farmland across the country is owned by white farmers. It hasn't always been that way. From 1860s to the 1920s, white people in dozens of towns violently attacked entire black communities, forcing them to flee their homes and land using terrorist tactics to include racist mobs, ABC News reported. The news of this farm bill was received well on Twitter. But some in the ADOS movement are wary of the farm bill, taking note of how it's written with terms that say it benefits people of color. One ADOS supporter tweeted, "Watch out for that trick bag words. I needed to say specifically for native black descendants of slavery." Another ADOS supporter wrote, "Every cent should go back to black farmers, not POC or anyone else. ADOS built this country and has had most everything they built nurtured stolen from them. Be very specific. American descendants of slavery deserves every form or repayment reparations possible. No more grifting." I graded this article good. And up next,
from the publication Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, entitled "A Long-Forgotten CIA Document from WikiLeaks Sheds Critical Light on Today's U.S. Politics and Wars," written by Glenn Greenwald. WikiLeaks is one of the world's most effective such groups, and it's thus no surprise that they're under such sustained attacks. The reason for my conclusion was that WikiLeaks had been exposing incriminating secrets of corrupt power centers for years. The technology they pioneered, enabling sources to leak to them troves of documents without anyone, including WikiLeaks itself, knowing the source's identity, was a major innovation in enabling greater transparency for the world's most powerful factions. But it was one WikiLeaks document that particularly caught my attention at first. A classified 2010 CIA Red Cell memorandum named after the highly secretive unit created by Bush-Cheney CIA Director George Tenet in the wake of the 9/11 attack. What made this document so fascinating, so revealing, is the CIA's discussion of how to manipulate public opinion to ensure it remains at least tolerant of, not supportive of, endless war, and specifically the vital role President Obama played for the CIA in packaging and selling U.S. wars around the world. The agency concluded its best and only asset for doing that was President Obama. I graded this report excellent. So what was it that the CIA knew about Obama that they could particularly rely on? Find out through the sourced ADOS Columbus Defender Volume 1 hot headline news essay, "Lineage First. Kamala Harris is Biden's VP. She is black and will pursue a black agenda." ADOS Columbus Defender Volume 1, or stay tuned here where you will find another answer to this during our main event. And next,
Obama. White population fear that African American community will get out of control with police reform. Tagline: the former president said that many people were upset when he questioned an arrest in Massachusetts. From the publication Fox News, author and writer Caitlin McFall. In an interview with CNN analyst April Ryan, former President Barack Obama discussed how race played a role in his third memoir, A Promised Land, in the lead up to the Trump's presidency and why police reform has become such a hot button issue. Obama said he first realized the contempt that many Americans, in particular white Americans, felt when addressing police reform after he made a comment condemning the arrest of 58-year-old Henry Louis Gates Jr., a black Harvard professor who was arrested after a neighbor called the police on him when he struggled to get through his own front door, thinking it was a break-in. Cambridge, Massachusetts police officer Sergeant James Crowley acknowledged that Gates provided he lived there by showing him identification, but he arrested him for disorderly conduct after the professor grew angry at the accusation of breaking into his house. Crowley reportedly asked him to step outside, at which point Gates yelled, "Why? Because I'm a black man in America?" I commented during a press conference about the fact that, I think the Cambridge police probably acted stupidly in arresting somebody in their own home, a 60-year-old man that posed no threat, Obama told Ryan in a Monday interview, and this became a big controversy. Just the fact that I was seen as questioning the police really upset a bunch of folks, and I think it indicated the degree to which the issue of police relations with minority communities and the black community in particular is always a hot topic. He continued, "It is something that unearths or escalates fears within white population that somehow the African American community is going to get out of control in some way or is not respecting authority." Obama explained that he thinks this line of reasoning is inaccurate and said that what the black community in America is looking for today is good and fair policing. I graded this article okay. And up next,
from the publication, The Uppity Negro Network, entitled Jeremiah Wright is Still Right. Writer Joshua Lawrence Lazard. Obama did not avoid his relationship to Trinity in his highly anticipated and recent memoir, A Promised Land. He devoted slightly over 8 pages to how the surfacing of Wright's infamous Goddamn America sermon affected the campaign. His treatment of how the series of events unfolded is in keeping with the pacing of the rest of the book. However, Obama's treatment of who Wright is and what he represents lacks context in the same way he accuses Wright of not providing for his own sermonic commentary. Steeped in the liberation theology tradition, Wright's sermon over the years preached the belief that God was on the side of the oppressed. In Obama's More Perfect Union speech, he equivocated Wright's righteous indignation against a country that had defaulted on its promissory note and had given its black citizens, as Martin Luther King observed, a bad check, with his grandmother's fear of black men walking down the street. Unequivocally, these two things are not equal. Comparing the corporate sins of a nation over centuries to the prejudices of an individual exemplify Obama's premier blind spot when it comes to race. What bothers me most is that 12 years later, after Ferguson, after the 2015 Baltimore uprising, after the creation of Black Lives Matter, after the election of Donald Trump, after Charlottesville, after standoffs over Confederate statues, after the death of George Floyd, after the death of Breonna Taylor, Obama chose to discuss Wright as a campaign obstacle to overcome rather than name the disproportionate racial divide that Wright's sermons epitomize. His decision to deliberate Wright's dismissal as one of political expediency in his post-presidency is an unfortunate choice and gives credence to the often quoted American myth, "This is not who we are." Yet, to the millions of black and brown citizens, this is exactly who we are. I graded this report good, excellent, that more black people are finally and openly criticizing Obama for the politically conservative Republican he is, because it is truly his nature and character people are truly revealing as they are taking a more critical look at his behaviors and stances on the issues, especially those issues that matter most to ADOS. Fair that Mr. Lazard can only come but so close to calling Mr. Obama for his continued class and race betrayals, as he continues to treat us just like he treated Reverend Jeremiah Wright, by throwing us all under the bus. And next,
why we, Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer, believe the Biden-Harris administration should cancel up to $50,000 in student debt on day one. Tagline: Black and brown students across the country go to college because they believe it is the surest path to build a future for themselves and their families. They did everything right. From the publication Blavity.com, author and writer Elizabeth Warren, co-author Chuck Schumer. For the first time in history, the American people have elected a president and vice president who committed to canceling billions in student loan debt. Americans outside of Washington get it. They see their friends and family and neighbors crushed by growing debt burdens, unable to afford their first home or start a small business. They know a senior whose Social Security check has been garnished by the federal government just to pay student loan interest. They know a mother struggling to make ends meet who never got a degree and now watches her debt load grow faster than she can keep up with. And even if they do not know one of the 43 million friends and neighbors buried under $1.5 trillion in federal student loan debt, they understand the need to boost our struggling economy. This is Econ 101. The best way to jumpstart our economy is to put more money in working families' pockets, money they can spend in their communities. Broad cancellation of student debt would give tens of millions of Americans $200 to $300 more to spend and save each month. Cancellation also means they won't have to worry about a student debt time bomb exploding when the payment suspension ends. With more money in their pockets and a smaller debt load, they can consider bigger purchases like cars and homes, and for some, start their own businesses. That's good for the borrower and good for our economy. I graded this article okay, that some ADOS can benefit from this debt relief. I'm one of them. Poor as only 16% of black ADOS even go to college. A majority of this debt cancellation will benefit white college students and graduates. And up next,
from the publication Atlanta Black Star, entitled Black Residents Account for 82% of No-Knock Search Warrants in Louisville. Writer Ashley Atwell. New data shows black people living in Louisville, Kentucky have been disproportionately targeted by no-knock search warrants from the Louisville Metro Police Department. Analysis by the Louisville Courier Journal determined that in the past 2 years, 82% of no-knock warrants have been served to black residents. Additionally, 68% of those warrants were executed in predominantly black West End neighborhood. Additionally, 86% of those warrants were executed in the predominantly black West End neighborhood. In comparison, only 23.5% of Jefferson County's population is black. The Louisville Metro Council banned no-knock warrants in June, about 3 months after resident Breonna Taylor was killed during a botched raid at her apartment, according to USA Today. The 26-year-old emergency medical technician was killed after LMPD officers stormed her home to execute a warrant related to a drug case involving her ex-boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Her partner fired a warning shot and 4 LMPD officers returned fire. The Courier Journal data also found black people were overrepresented in announced searches. An examination of 356 warrants found 243 identified the race of the subjects. An examination of 356 warrants found 243 identified the race of the suspects. White and black suspects accounted for 48% of those warrants each. I graded this article good. And next,
Negro Whisperers. From the publication Context Media, author and writer Toraine Walker. Throughout American history, there's been a class of African Americans who served as diplomats between the black masses and the white power structure. They articulated the wishes of blacks in non-threatening language that flattered white benefactors into offering their patronage, then explained to downtrodden blacks the rules and conditions under which that patronage would be given. Much like that good white man in the days of Jim Crow, there's a white donor lobby that demands to be flattered but doesn't want to get too close to the pain or the people they claim to want to help. This is where the Negro Whisperer comes in. The Negro Whisperer is a modern version of the racial diplomat, and their business model is giving black people the feeling that someone's working on their behalf, while making white people feel good enough about themselves to open their wallets. If you do that well, the doors of the cable news guest appearances and speaking engagement worlds open wide for you, so long as you stay on message. In the protest economy, the raw anger of the victimized is sanitized, and when it materializes, both the white donor and the Negro Whisperer are uncomfortable because both are removed from the reality of struggle. In the 6 years since the killing of Trayvon Martin, technology and social media creates immediate mass awareness of nearly every incident of institutionalized American anti-blackness. It has also created a new social hierarchy, a class of people who became famous through protesting police brutality, many of whom were able to parlay the skill into lucrative outcomes, whether that be a large corporate donation, awards, or becoming recognized authorities in black suffering. In the wake of that, the question being asked is, who do they help? And how do they benefit the communities of the people they claim they represent? I graded this article excellent. I believe Turing's work should be added to the list of the black men's voices that we spoke about last episode. He is a voice you should also be listening to. His information will be in the show notes. And up next,
from the publication Ben Swan Reality Check, entitled RFK Jr., the big question about COVID vaccines that no one in media is asking. Tagline, RFK Jr., the big question about COVID vaccines that no one in the media is asking. Do these vaccines actually prevent the spread of the virus? Writer Ben Swan. 4 major vaccines to combat the coronavirus are on the way, and all the media can talk about is how well these vaccines appear to work. Efficacy rates in the 90th percentile, 94% for Moderna, 95% for Pfizer, 92% for Sputnik V, and only 72% for AstraZeneca. Here's the question the media, though, is not asking. The question, though, among all these vaccines is not just about the efficacy rate. Instead, they're missing, or they seem to be missing, a very important question about something Dr. Anthony Fauci recently said, which is that the actual vaccines themselves may not stop asymptomatic spread. Now think about that. The vaccines may not be able to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and if that is the case, then you have to ask the question, what's the point? What's the point of taking a vaccine if it does not stop the spread of a virus? I did an interview last week with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the Children's Health Defense, who talked about this very subject. Here's a portion of that interview. As Peter Dosh of the British Medical Journal said, and as Dr. Hazeltine from Harvard said, these trials were designed to succeed. They weren't designed to tell us whether this vaccine is to prevent any injury or any deaths, or whether they block transmissibility. And this is the big issue. We know from the monkey trials of the AstraZeneca vaccine, the monkeys, their symptoms became milder, but they were still transmitting COVID. What happens when you get the population these vaccines and it doesn't prevent those same people transmitting the disease? You simply turn them into asymptomatic carriers, and this does not end the lockdowns. It doesn't end the mask wearing and other precautions. No need for lockdowns. That's the idea, what you just said about the asymptomatic carriers, if that is the case. And I haven't studied enough to know if that would be the case. Turning everyone into an asymptomatic carriers, doesn't that do precisely what we're trying to prevent, which created lockdowns in the first place? I graded this report excellent. It revealed inherently what the WHO itself said just months ago, but was not really widely reported, that asymptomatic carriers do not spread the disease. The problem is, after taking this shot, these gentlemen are finding out that they may in fact spread the disease, turning once asymptomatic people that didn't spread the disease into disease spreaders. Interesting, all that. Again, I ask better questions and demand an investigation to get answers. And that's it for this week's Rapid News. All articles featured will be posted in our Facebook group and in the show notes on our website. Are you busy? Is the news coming so fast you can barely keep up? No worries. The Articles of ADOS podcast is here to help. Hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening right now, and we'll make sure you stay up to date on the news and information that affects you and your ADOS life.
Time now for the main event.
In this week's main event, we will interview 3 articles. Barack Obama criticizes progressives over defund the police, saying slogan can drive away moderates. Democrats should ditch defund the police and give Ocasio-Cortez a bigger platform, Obama says. And lastly, Obama isn't mad about slogans. He's mad we're questioning the police. These articles came from publications Left Voice, USA Today, and the New York Times. I will ask the questions. Lisa will give the answers from our guests. Peace, Mrs. Cosarelli, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Thrush. Welcome to the Articles of ADOS podcast. First, questions for you, Miss Cosarelli. What is Mr. Obama misguiding the black public and movements for Black Lives Now about?
Obama said that we should steer clear of snappy slogans like defund the police because it alienates people.
Oh, do we have a rare guest that sees through the black veneer of Obama enough to realize his role in undermining popular citizen struggles, as well as his role in disrupting black ADOS progress and struggles? Ms. Cosarelli, what do you believe are Obama's true motivations?
Obama wants to co-opt and crush the Black Lives Matter movement because he supports the police and the capitalist system it protects.
I am in full agreement with that statement. I hope in our conversation here we'll get to the reasons why. But for now, please proceed.
Political candidates lose support when using snappy slogans like defund the police. That's what former president and political heavyweight Barack Obama said this week on Good Look America, a Snapchat show with Peter Hamby. He went on to say, "You lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're actually going to get the changes you want done." According to Obama, the only way to put an end to police terror is to stop talking about it and stop fighting against it. We should expect nothing less from a member of the ruling class, especially from Barack Obama, a former U.S. president and leader of the racist, imperialist war machine. For all of Obama's popularity, his comments aren't friendly advice from an activist who shares our goals. Obama represents a capitalist state which needs a police force to maintain a system of billionaire leeches who profit off the labor and misery of the vast majority of working class folks. This is Matthew Brown of US Today. I must vehemently disagree with the tone Ms. Cosarelli is casting regarding former President Barack Obama. He is just explaining how progressives might be hurting their own cause by using slogans like defund the police as rallying cries for goals such as reforming the criminal justice system. In an interview with Snapchat's Good Look America, Obama said such phrases and labels such as socialism can drive away moderate voters and cost elections for Democratic candidates.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, Ms. Cosarelli, the progressives nor movement for Black Lives activists have clamored for socialism in their defund police demands. One could expect that they sharpen their expectations regarding defund the police, but there are no calls for socialism. So what you've attempted to inject into this discussion is name-calling in an attempt to sway the weak-minded that everything is wrong but capitalism mantras. I am not ignoring that people among these movements do have socialistic interests. They are just not being expressed with this call for much-needed police action reform.
If you believe, as I do, that we should be able to reform the criminal justice system so that it is not biased and treats everybody fairly, I guess you can use a snappy slogan like defund the police. But you lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're actually going to get the changes you want done, he told Snapchat's Peter Hamley. President Obama has trodden a tricky political path.
Oh, that's what you're calling it, Mr. Thrush?
Yes, while promoting his new memoir, Promised Land, during an appearance on Snapchat's Good Luck America show, the former president called on progressives to ditch catchphrases like defund the police, while moments later chiding party elders for not spotlighting young stars like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Many Democrats, including Mr. Obama, have suggested Republicans were able to weaponize the defund slogan during the election by falsely accusing Democrats of pushing to abolish entire police departments, while most of the party's candidates advocated restructuring existing agencies to reduce police violence. But the snappy quip drew instant criticism, polite but pointed, from several prominent progressives, including Representative Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, who tweeted, "We lose people in the hands of police. It's not a slogan, but a policy demand."
Well, it is good that Representative Omar is also willing to correct the former president on that. Sounds like an accurate and snappy comeback to me.
Obama's comments come as the Democratic Party wrestles with its underperformance in the 2020 election.
Proceed, Mr. Brown. Make Obama's case, please.
Although Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the presidential race by a comfortable margin in the Electoral College and in the popular vote, his wins in some battleground states were narrower than expected. Democrats failed to capture the Senate and lost seats in the House as some voters split their tickets, voting for Biden in the White House race and Republicans in down-ballot contests. The former president's comments on defund the police swiftly drew backlash from some progressives.
Rightly so. It's funny how Mr. Obama never reached the conclusion that corporate Democrats never offered the public anything other than Biden being a replacement for Trump. That is the reason why Democrats lost so many seats, just as they had during the 2016 election, that for some reason wasn't widely covered during the surprise win of Trump. Instead, the rushing Hackingate lie was given media-wide attention, while the loss of Democratic seats in Congress and across the nation went virtually unnoticed, substituted by false Russia Hackingate claims, instead of a still needed analysis as to why the Democrats keep losing ground. This false trail that Obama is attempting to lead the public on is only an attempt by the widely predator class to continue to divert the public away from their impact upon the Democratic Party, where they are using their go-to guy, Obama, to blame black people and progressives for a fault that is truly all their own.
Mr. Obama struck a markedly different note when the discussion moved on to this summer's Democratic National Convention, which featured a blink and a miss it appearance of Miss Ocasio-Cortez.
Why, Mr. Thrush? What is Mr. Obama attempting to inject AOC into this smear of the movements for black lives and progressives?
The freshman lawmaker supported President-elect Joseph R. Biden Jr. often in less than enthusiastic terms, after backing Senator Bernie Sanders in the primary. Democrats close to Mr. Biden said at the time that the brevity of Ms. Ocasio-Cortez's appearance was not a slight, but they conceded that Mr. Biden's more enthusiastic supporters had been given more airtime. The Democratic National Convention, I thought, was really successful considering the pandemic and really used technology wisely, Mr. Obama said in the interview. But the fact that an AOC only got, 3 minutes or 5 minutes when she speaks to a broad section of young people who are interested in what she has to say, even if they don't agree with everything she says, he added. You give her a platform just like there may be some other young Democrats who come from more conservative areas who have a different point of view. But new blood is always good, Mr. Obama said.
Well, Mr. Thrush, all that would mean something if only AOC had not been turned to the dark side. What do I mean? Well, the squad, as well as Bernie Sanders, voting for the largest transfer of wealth through Congress during the CARES Act, where the public got a mere $1,200, while the already wealthy got trillions. How the white domination racist media helped them to hide this fact by showing them in disagreement with Republicans, they all still voted for it. That along with AOC's getting rid of some of her old staff members and replacing them with Washington hacks while quietly covering for Pelosi, even nicknaming Pelosi Mama Bear. Such actions reveal that she's not entirely a reliable progressive. Of course, Obama knows this about AOC, which is why he's advancing her as an alternative voice for progressive causes, knowing that she has been turned. while simultaneously attempting to weaken citizens' demands for police activities that decimate black lives and communities. Where are Obama's ideas on that? As good as police cameras have been? As KKK cops turn them off? Or how did it go with regards to his Justice Department's handling of the Tamir Rice case? Oh, that was silently dropped, with his family just finding out a couple of weeks ago. So progressives and the movement advocating for black lives can draw any wisdom from former President Obama? At some point, his presence must be recognized for the joke it actually is and has always been.
Even some politicians within the Democratic Party itself have spoken out.
Yes, Mrs. Corazelli, please continue.
Yes, like Cori Bush tweeted, "With all due respect, Mr. President, let's talk about losing people. We lost Michael Brown Jr., we lost Breonna Taylor, we're losing our loved ones to the police violence. It's not a slogan. It's a mandate for keeping our people alive. Defund the police," Ilhan Omar said. "We lose people in the hands of police. It's not a slogan, but a policy demand, and centering the demand for equitable investments and budgets for communities across the country gets us progress and safety." They are correct in their criticism of Obama. But despite their progressive rhetoric, they are also Democrats, and their progressive rhetoric also plays the role of bringing anti-racist activists into the Democratic Party. The party that's currently led by none other than shoot him in the leg, Biden.
That was a good one.
For rank and file activists, the lesson is clear. It's not enough to condemn Obama's words. It's not enough to condemn Obama's record. It's time to finally break with a party that exists in order to act as a graveyard of social movements.
Not surprising how Obama is leading the way on that, which leads us to the why he remains a consistent drum major for injustice.
Defund the police may be alienating, but for whom? For the racist capitalist system that defends the police to maintain wealth, inequality, and exploitation? In fact, we want to defeat their policies and the entire system they uphold. And for that task, we don't need Barack Obama or the Democratic Party.
This is a fact proven with his own words of betrayal. One could hope that what I'm about to share with you all will end his influence on American politics in general, as well as cut the ties that bind so many progressives and black people who still take Obama seriously. I would like to get your responses to what Obama admits here, which explains his true intentions toward progressives and ADOS. This is a segment from the Jimmy Dore Show, where he explains with a more factually based reason as to why the Democrats were so devastated in races across the country in 2016, beyond the office of the presidency.
The Democrats are now Republicans, and this isn't hyperbole. This isn't an exaggeration. We've been saying this. We've said that Bill Clinton did things in the 90s that Republicans could only dream of doing. And I'm going to show you this. I'm not going to tease it anymore. Here's Barack Obama. He was being accused of being a socialist because that's what the Republicans always do. Remember, you can't nominate Bernie. They'll call him a socialist. They've been calling Democrats a socialist since FDR. That's what they do. They just call you socialists. Barack Obama is going to answer that criticism here. But the answer to that criticism reveals a bigger flaw and the reason why the Democrats lose and are wiped out. Here it comes.
Believe that. The truth of the matter is that my policies are so mainstream that, if I had said the same policies that I have back in the 1980s, I'd be considered a moderate Republican.
The reason Mr. Obama is using the 1980s as a reference point is because it is, since that time, then choosing between lesser of two evils candidates began the political spectrum slide towards widely predator power in the society that is highly conservative. Therefore, based on 1980 standards, Obama was in fact pursuing and advocating for Republican values. Ms. Cozzarelli, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Thrush, what are your responses to former President Obama's obvious betrayal of progressives and the movements for Black lives?
Well,
Excuse me, hold on. I'd much prefer a response from Articles of ADOS listeners to weigh in on this. Well, that completes this interview. Listeners, you can get the link to the full articles on our website in this week's show notes. Coming up, we have the commentary on this article. Did we like it? Did we hate it? Stay tuned.
We want to take the time to give our friends and listeners a shout out. Thank you for clicking that subscribe button and for liking and sharing the podcast. You can also continue supporting the show by joining our Patreon, where you can receive exclusive content and promotional items for as little as $3 a month. Sponsoring the show will ensure that we can continue to bring you the news and information important to your ADOS life. So head on over and join us at patreon.com/articles of ADOS. All right, so what do we think of this article?
Loved it.
Yeah, I liked your approach you took with it. Number one, interviewing all three of them together and them going back and forth, in the article. In the interview. Mm-hmm. It was a different approach, and I like that really good because, number one, they weren't agreeing on how Obama's effect on a lot of the social movements that are birthed really out through Democratic grassroots. That's even though they're progressive in nature, it's still at the base a Democratic group of people that are voting for this, and we're hoping that the progressive voices of Democrats are rising, and when they do, they get stomped on by the likes of Obama. Mm-hmm. So I like the fact that she questioned whether or not the Democratic Party is a place for progressive thought. Mm.
And that's so accurate. And Jimmy Dore and the BAP, Black Agenda Report, they get it right. Obama was always the more effective evil in the lesser of two evil dynamics. He poses the image symbolically of a black man, and therefore he's been able to access the burdens and potential implications all that entails, while at the same time he has been operating from the perspective of his lineage, which were slaveholders, which were white, which have an agenda to maintain the same. So his behavior as president and his post-presidential behaviors are completely in line with that tact. He has to dance lightly at times so that he appears as though he's a black man advocating these ideas. But in essence, his goal is to undermine progressive and black lives well into the future. And he's going to continue to do so as long as we give his voice weight in the political sphere.
But he's not Trump.
That's right. He's not Trump.
Trump's the devil, and apparently Barack Obama is an angel.
He is. Those are symbolic ways that they are both looked at, and purposely false dichotomies are erected around that to maintain control over the population. Again, as Ron Paul stated, as other people of the pastor from South Africa stated, he is literally the face of imperialist white domination around the world. And the CIA saw him that before he became president. So the question becomes, what do they know about Obama? Why were they so certain that he would be an advocacy for spreading more wars? It's because they knew his family history. They knew that his lineage and that he would be abiding by that lineage. Continuation of white domination power systems to be maintained at all expense possible. And the expense has been over black lives and black quality of lives. And we need to wake up to that simple fact. The CIA knew him for what he was and counted on it, and they benefited. We thought he was symbolically going to be representing us in our interests and would somehow get us the comeback at some point in his presidency. That was betrayed, and we know that now. Some of us, too many of us, are still not acknowledging that. At the same time, some of us are, and therefore the ADOS movement.
Yeah, I think it might have been. I wouldn't say it was over the summer, but I noticed a pattern in Barack Obama when he was starting to they call it shade.
Okay.
He started to shade the progressives, and I wrote a tweet that I don't get too many responses on my tweet, but it was to the fact that how I'm curious to see how young progressives, and this had to be 2 years ago, how young progressives reckon with their favorite president, who they voted for, outnumberingly voted for him, progressive young voters voted for Barack Obama, how now he is the one who was against everything that you standing for. And this was after Bernie lost the first time. And he started, saying that that's not the type of, platform that we want to work. Then he was saying that stuff then. Now he's always been against any progressive thought. So,
people just don't want to see it.
How is he still your idol? He is not. He does not represent what you stand for. He does not represent anything that you thought he was going to stand for. That's not the guy. That's not who he is. You're starting to see who he is. A lot more people, as Daud said, now these reporters are starting to see who he is. What's wrong with being able to say, you know what, I was wrong about him. I was wrong. I'll do better in the future. But until you can acknowledge that you were wrong about Barack Obama, you're going to continue to choose bad presidential candidates, i.e. Biden, Harris. Is an exact result of you not accepting the fact that you chose Barack Obama, somebody to represent you. He lied to you. Accept that he lied. Accept that he represented himself as something other than he is. But, that's my opinion. And until you do, and you have some similar other more dramatic ways of dealing with Barack Obama and his image, that maybe I'm coming closer to your side of things. The burn his image at stake because,
we do.
It was just a false person that I don't know how to put the words into what he was. It was just like, I don't know, the fascination with, even I voted for the guy twice, and that was 2 bad votes that I did. I acknowledge that. And so, because I thought, of course, the second term was just going to be amazing because he's so free to do things now. All right, that completes our commentary on this week's main event. We hope you like it because it was the last one. That's right. The season is ending, and that's the last main event. So check back next season for our new and improved main event, where we inform you on what's going on in your ADOS life, ADOS community, and ADOS politics. So season 1 is ending, and we want to thank all of you, our listeners, for your support. If you listen for 5 minutes or you listen the whole show, we appreciate it. For everyone in our Facebook group, thank you for sharing and engaging with us every week. Next week's episode 35 is the last show of the season. But in the meantime, you can always continue to share information in the group and stay connected with us.
We are looking forward to season 2 returning in January 2021. Look out for new ideas and new energy. If you have talent or any idea you think would be great for the show, shoot us a message or email your segment ideas to listeners@articlesofados.com.
We have something great planned for the last show of the season. We are calling it Rapid Commentary. All rapid news stories and our thoughts about them. Do we like them? Do we hate them? Well, you just have to tune in and see. Nothing but rapid news and personalities. Should be fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. See you next week, guys.
We're coming to get our check.
There you have it, another week, another show. Thanks for joining us on the Articles of ADOS podcast. Make sure to visit our website, articlesofados.com, where you can join our mailing list and see the show notes for today's episode.
Be sure to tune in next Friday for a new episode of Undiscussed News you may have missed. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, send us an email to listeners@articlesofados.com.
And remember, you can catch us live at 10 a.m. every Friday on WCRS 92.7 and 98.3 here in Columbus, Ohio. Also head over to our Patreon page to support the podcast as we give you weekly news and information important to our community. Until next time, family, stay safe and stay strong. Peace.
We're coming to get our check. We're coming to get our check. We're coming to get our check. We're coming to get our check.